Welcome to episode 280 of CppCast, the first podcast for C++ developers by C++ developers. I'm your host, Rob Irving, joined by my co-host, Jason Turner. Jason, how you doing today?
I'm okay, Rob. How are you doing?
Doing well. How have the holidays been treating you?
Uh, Fine. I mean, it's a weird year, just like it is for everyone.
It's a very weird year. It definitely is. But yeah, I don't know about you, but we did manage to see some family. My wife's sister and her boyfriend, we all quarantined for like 2 weeks, and then they came down here. So it was nice to see some people. It's been so long since seeing anyone like outside of my house.
Yeah, we tried to do similar. Yeah, so seen some family also under similar circumstances.
Yeah. Okay, well, at the top of every episode, I like to read a piece of feedback. This week we got a tweet from Francis Lamar saying Google Podcasts has finally added NDR CPP. My podcasts are once again all centralized, and then he asked, by the way, do you have any podcast recommendations? He's currently listening to CppCast, CPP Chat, TLB Hit, ADSP the podcast, and then JF Bastion also commented on this about Two's CP, Two's Compliment, being the best new podcast around, which...
Is that JF's then?
No.
Oh.
Two's Compliment appears to be Matt Godbolt's podcast.
Ah, right. Okay.
Which he apparently just like stealth launched.
He did, yes.
A couple days ago.
I didn't say anything about it publicly because I didn't know how stealthy it was supposed to be still.
But yeah, I think we made a similar comment last week about how it seems like everyone, is maybe getting bored with the pandemic and being stuck inside their houses and is starting new podcasts. So Matt Godbolt and Ben Rady have joined the club.
And I think Matt's is not specifically a C++ podcast.
Okay.
It's just someone who we know in the C++ world who happens to be doing a podcast.
Right.
Which I think is similar for some of these others as well, like TLB Hit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, not necessarily focused on C++, but I guess focused on like systems languages and low-level things.
So have you listened to any of these yet, Rob?
No, I have not had a chance to listen to any of these new podcasts yet because, yeah, we have time to make them, but very little time to listen to podcasts these days. At least that's the way I feel.
Well, let's see. I've listened to like 3 episodes of a podcast, and it was the 3 episodes of CppCast that I was not in, basically.
You've never listened to any other podcasts?
No.
Oh, wow.
Well, I mean, I did watch/listen to the new one from the JetBrains crew, which I forget the name of now with so many of them going around.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, but in my head, I was watching a YouTube video. I wasn't listening to a podcast.
Right. Which I guess, it's not that different whether you're watching it with video or listening.
Well, they had like the slides for what they were talking about.
Oh, okay.
Going on live too, so you didn't kind of have to have the video, but it was there if you wanted to see it.
Okay.
We've never considered doing something like that.
No, we do the video on YouTube, but it's always just video of us, not any slides or code or anything like that. Okay, well, we'd love to hear your thoughts about the show. You can always reach out to us on Facebook, Twitter, or email us at feedback@cppcast.com. And don't forget to leave us a review on iTunes or subscribe on YouTube. So it's just the two of us today for our end of the year show. And we thought we would just kind of go over some more news and maybe do a little Q&A, but we actually did not get that many questions sent in, unfortunately.
That's all right. So is your plan actually to publish this on the 31st then, to sneak it out before the end of the year?
Yeah, that's the plan.
Okay. And that'll be 53 weeks of episodes.
53 episodes in the year, yeah.
I need to go back and look at how this calendar worked out for C++ Weekly because I don't know how many episodes I published this year.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm always on a very strict Monday morning schedule too, so,
Okay. Well, let's get started. So the first one we have is EMBO++, which is Odin Holm's conference in Germany about embedded development, is announcing their dates for this year. It's going to
2021.
be March, what was it, 21? Yeah, March
Yeah,
2021, I think 25th. Was that right?
25th through the 27th. Yes.
Yeah. And I'll be honest, when I first looked at this announcement, I was a little worried. Like I thought they were planning on doing an in-person conference, which, I know we have vaccines going around and everything now, so it's, going to be getting safer, but I don't know how many people are really going to have access to that by March. But it does look like it's virtual, at least according to the EMBO Twitter.
Yeah,
It's not really mentioned much on the website, but it looks like it is going to be all virtual.
and they have their call for papers open. If you go down
Mm-hmm.
into the apply here,
Yeah.
but you need to get this in. Let's see, where's the date? I think it's December 31st. Yeah.
So that's today. If you're listening to the podcast.
Yeah. If you see this podcast, the moment it's released, you hear this, go ahead and pause it now, put in your application to speak at EMBO 2021.
Yeah. Okay. Are you planning on virtually attending this one? I don't think either of us have attended that one before, right?
No, I have not yet attended that one. I would like someday to actually go, if
Yeah.
possible. I haven't yet decided what I'm doing, either submitting a talk or attending or not for it.
Okay.
Still feel a little bit like, yeah, the virtual talk thing, it's a little weird,
Yeah.
even though
Yeah.
I've done it at my meetup a bunch of times. But I don't know, I kind of feel like it's cheating at my meetup because I know all those people
Right.
and I know what to expect from them, and I get great feedback and a great amount of interaction from them and everything.
And it's a smaller group. I'm guessing everyone actually uses their webcams and everything, so it's more interactive.
We'll get 30 people and 20 of them maybe will have their webcams on, so it's pretty cool like that.
That's pretty good.
Yeah. And everyone's super they know all the Zoom protocol, right? I think I've had to mute someone once this entire year.
That's pretty good.
Yeah.
Okay. Next thing we have is a post on the CPP subreddit, and this is about runtime access of stud tuple elements. You want to tell me more about this one, Jason?
Yeah, so if you are used to using tuple and then you're like, you know what, I really need access to the fifth element or whatever in this, or you don't know, you have to make some sort of runtime determination. I either need the first or the fifth. It's a little bit of a pain because standard get, when you are calling it on tuple or on anything that has access with get, like array and pair, then you have to know at compile time which element you want to access. And this is reasonable because standard tuple, each element potentially has a different type. So you have to know at compile time which one you're accessing because the compiler doesn't have any way of knowing what type to generate in there. So this is one of these things that if you're used to using tuple, every now and then you're like, I just want runtime access to this thing. So this person wrote a handy little wrapper tool that lets you do a runtime determination which tuple element you want. It has caveats, of course. It has to return, you have to give it a generic lambda to call into it or something because it still has to generate all the possible calls for all the possible types that would be in there.
Right.
But so I guess maybe as a little bit of peek behind the curtain, I'm the one who found most of these news things for us to talk about. And so they're all more things that appealed to me. And most of them were on the Reddit C++, but largely for the discussion. So the discussion here is a few people oh, but wait, if you did this, you can simplify your implementation by this. And some of these things are things that, we've talked about in the community recently. I can't remember if it's been on CppCast or on other venues, but doing a linear search through the elements is actually faster and generates better code than trying to do a binary search through the elements to try to get to the one that you want, for example.
Okay. Yeah, I first looked at this and I'm not sure if I've really run into situations where I felt the need to have runtime access to a tuple. So I didn't look too deep into this, but I can understand that, certain situations would arise and something like this could be very useful.
Yeah, could be. There's of course a couple of people on Reddit that are like, why would you ever want this? Well, sometimes the value that you need to access from this tuple originates from an input file or a script or
Mm,
something.
right. Okay. So the next thing we have is a YouTube series, and this is Project from Scratch in C++. And I did watch, I think, the first 2 or 3 videos of this, and it looks like a great series, especially for beginners. The author is going into a lot of detail. I watched up to the one where he started going over setting up your CMake project and going into pretty good detail about how to create something from the ground up, which I don't see that many other, tutorials or anything like that out there. So this seems like a good resource.
It seems to be the general response from people like, thank you for doing this, how to get started from scratch kind of thing.
Yeah.
I tried to watch a video, but my web browser was acting up when I was doing that, and I couldn't get any YouTube video to play.
Really?
What the heck? Yeah, I don't know what was happening. I just shut down the computer. I decided it needed some nap time.
Yeah. That fixed it for you at least?
I don't know because I forgot to go back and check after that. One of the things
Yeah.
I totally appreciate about this, though, is he actually has a blog to go with it that discusses some of the things in the episodes, too.
I did not look at the blog. Did you look at the blog much?
I definitely pulled it up, yeah, and looked and saw that it has, like, description of your CMake project layout and stuff and, like, the word descriptions for getting started with CMake. And
Hmm.
I'm like, wow, okay. I mean, and now to be fair, like, is this best practices? I don't know. I didn't dig into that stuff. You know, looking at the CMake here, I see that it's using the global CMake functions, like include directories, instead of target include directories.
Hmm.
So maybe, maybe it's not 100% and it's using a file glob for generating the set of CPP files, but it'll get you going.
Yeah. I think that's what he was really going for, just to kind of teach you the basics to start off a new project.
Yeah.
And it seems to be doing a pretty good job at that. Good stuff. Okay, next thing we have is Bona, which is a C++ 20 based modern file information viewer, and also Bulk, which is a Windows portable package manager. And this is from Force Charlie. And again, he posted this on the CPP subreddit. And I looked into it a little bit. I didn't look into the code, but Balk looked interesting. Kind of similar to Chocolatey, if you've heard of that,
Mhm.
which is a Windows, you know, package manager, kind of similar to apt-get from Linux.
So is it, I actually went the other route and spent more time looking at the source code for Bona.
Okay.
And, but for Bulk, is it,
It,
when you said it's like chocolatey, but is it a C++ dependency package manager or is it just an app package
it's an
manager?
app package manager. At least that's what it looked like to me. So you can just type in things like, I think, bulk get or bulk install 7-zip or bulk install curl, and it will download that package install for you, and they can use it from the command line.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, and chocolatey, I guess for our listeners, if they've never used that, you might want to check it out because it's pretty awesome.
Yeah, especially if you're used to the Linux style of installing a program and not having to go to a website to download the installer. Being able to do it from the command line is pretty wonderful. And if you ever get into setting up virtual machines or setting up containers with Docker, then using Chocolatey is really the way to go.
Did do you actively use chocolatey?
I'm not sure how actively I'd say I use it, but I definitely use it. Yeah, I have done a little bit with containers over the past few months, and I found myself going to Chocolatey a lot when setting those up. Yeah.
I like every time I do a fresh install of Windows, I think to myself, I'm going to use Chocolatey to manage all of the apps on here that I care about, Audacity and whatever like we use for our tools.
Yeah.
And that lasts like 5 minutes. And then I don't know, just because I'm on Windows and I have other ways of installing things, I totally forget to go back to it later. It's like this like mental block I have or something.
Yeah. I think like years ago, I set up a script to kind of start off a fresh development machine with some things that you can install from Chocolatey. Things like a Git client and 7-zip, not necessarily everything I used, but enough to kind of get me going. But, I set all that up and I used it once and then probably forgot about it next time I set up a new machine.
I have used it to manage the build VMs though, for
Hmm.
like installing the Visual Studio command line tools and all that stuff.
Yeah, it's great for that.
Yeah. So what's the other half of this though, which we completely Obana or Bona or
No,
however it's
yeah.
supposed to be pronounced? Yeah. A modern file information viewer for Windows. Now, to be perfectly honest, I spent less time looking at what it was supposed to do and more time trying to look at the source code since it says it's a C++20 library.
Hmm.
Um, so I noticed it doesn't use modules, but that's totally fair because what did we discuss this a couple weeks ago that, modules might be actually a 2023 feature by the time we have all the support that we need for it.
Just get like the standard library support for modules. I think that's kind of a big thing that we'll all be waiting on. Yeah.
Yeah. But there's an interesting mix in here. Like, depending on which file you go into, some of it's got like pound defines, and some of it's got like context for all the things in C++20 throughout it.
Hmm.
So I don't know if it's just because it's been in the process of being updated or if it just depended on what context that code was used in or whatever. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's the people on Reddit like how like information it can give you about files. It can tell you what's the PE, ELF, mock things, its dependencies, its export symbols, whatever, and give you that information back in JSON.
Yeah, the dependency information that it generates seems really useful to me. I know I don't know if this one does anything on Windows or if this is just a Linux utility.
It's a Windows mainly utility.
Oh, it's Windows too? I'll have to take a look at what type of output it generates for Windows because
Windows only, I think it says.
Bona is?
Yeah.
So it analyzes the Linux, .so files dependencies on when you're running it on Windows. Okay,
That's what it says it can do. But
that's
I mean,
interesting.
to
Yeah.
be fair, all it's doing is, I mean, it's parsing an ELF
Hmm.
structure or PE or whatever, and then can give you just what the binary reports about itself.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Very
Yeah,
cool.
that is definitely what the example screenshot is showing.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess I didn't connect that when looking at this. So it says PEL for mock binary format. So I guess it doesn't actually work with like a Windows DLL or EXE because they wouldn't have, you know, ELF symbols.
No, but PE isn't that one of Windows's binary formats?
Maybe. I'm not sure. Okay, I didn't try this one
Hey,
out.
we all know that ELF is Linux and Mach
Yeah,
is Mac OS, and now I'm
you
totally
might be right.
curious. It's
'Cause
something.
I know I still, I used to use depends a lot when
Oh,
trying to figure
yes.
out if I was missing, some DLL that was required. But depends is no longer being supported at all. It doesn't work well on Windows 10 at all. And I found a while back dependencies, which I think I probably found and talked about on this show.
I think you're right, yeah.
And dependencies, like I said, it's a modern update of depends. It's very useful. But if you don't want to use a GUI and if you just want to be able to get that list of dependencies in your command line, this might be great for that. I need to go and try it out and see how well it works with Windows DLLs. Yeah.
It is portable executable, by the way. It is the binary format that is
Okay.
used on Windows. I had to know at that point.
Okay. I definitely need to try this out then.
Extend it if it doesn't show you what you want it to have, and then you have a nice little... Actually, that's a brilliant idea. Well, sometimes things like depends or dependency walker or whatever those tools, sometimes you need to know at runtime which DLLs it's opened, depending on how badly your world has gone.
Yeah.
If this is only checking the binary itself, but let us know. Extend it. New hobby project for Rob to work on.
We'll see about that, but I'm definitely going to try it out.
I am very happy to volunteer other people to work on projects.
Yeah. It's great. It's real easy.
It's super easy.
Okay, next thing we have is, again, on RCPP, is the concepts appreciation thread, and this is just someone who was working on, I think, their game engine, and found a use case for concepts while working on some code, and they were just so happy at how well it worked that they just had to share it with the world. And yeah, I agree. Like, I haven't really gone in and tried using concepts yet, but it definitely seems like it's one of the best features that we got out of C++20. It's really powerful. Yeah.
And these requires expressions. Now, in this example, the author doesn't use the requires expressions, but then in a few comments in, they're like, by the way, you could have gotten rid of the concepts altogether for the way that you're using this and just do if const expr and then a requires expression in there. That construct can be crazy powerful. But just the fact that you can just so easily detect, like, did the just generic type that was passed into me have a start function or not?
Right.
If it did, then do this. Otherwise, do this. I mean, I don't know. It's maybe realize that this is a bad idea because we end up with code that's really hard to like track what's going on. But I like it.
Yeah, I like it a lot. Very, looks like it's very useful for factory functions, and I'm sure there's tons of other spots of code that can be cleaned up now that we have concepts.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think the author or one of the comments talked about how they first tried doing this with Sphene, and either it didn't work or it just wound up being really ugly, and this is just so much nicer.
Yes.
Yeah.
I have taken a standpoint of avoid Sphene whenever I can for all of my C++ career. It's like I use function overloads or partial specialization if I can. Sphene is an absolute last resort. As soon as I get C++ 17, if const expr to avoid Sphene when I could. And now with concepts, I get to avoid it permanently.
Yeah. Good stuff. Okay. And then last thing we have, Jason, is a C++ logging library, and this is LWlog. And according to the benchmarks, it looks like it's currently faster than speedlog, which is pretty impressive. The author is saying it's still definitely like a work in progress. He mentioned some of the features he still wants to implement, but looks pretty impressive.
The thing that I am curious about here and should have spent a few moments looking at is it's the description definitely says that it does, well, it says non-async logging. It does synchronous logging.
Right.
So and the part where I wonder, okay, here we go. So it's comparing LW logs synchronous logging to speed logs synchronous logging. By default, speed log is
both?
asynchronous.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's one way that speed log is so stupid fast is that it does asynchronous logging.
Okay.
So depending on your needs, though, if you really want synchronous logging, then this LW log looks like it's crazy fast. And from what I saw reading the discussion and stuff, they're not using lib format.
No, I think they're trying to have no dependencies when possible. So when I think they said, when MSVC has stood format fully enabled, then they'll switch over to using that, but they don't want to depend on the format library. They just want to use what's in the standard library.
Right. So right now they don't have any kind of formatting capability.
Right.
Yeah. It's an interesting concept, though. I mean, I appreciate that. You're like, well, C++ 20, the ink is dry.
Mm-hmm. Just waiting on
Format's
everything to be
coming.
implemented. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, although none of our standard library implementations actually have format in it yet. Not that I know of.
I guess not. I think they called out MSVC, but yeah, do GCC and Clang not have it yet?
I don't think anyone does. I'm going to look real quick.
Okay.
Text formatting. Nope, no one has. Oh, at least according to the CPP reference compiler support chart, no one has it yet.
Well, we're almost at the end of 2020, so hopefully we'll start getting everything early 2021.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So I did have one other thing that I'd like to comment on here.
Absolutely.
I, as our listeners are probably aware, published my book about 6 months ago, earlier in the year, and several people have asked for print versions, so I am hoping in the next couple of days here to actually get this up on Amazon
Oh,
Print on Demand service.
nice.
I just have a little decision to make though, because all of the code samples are syntax highlighted in color and definitely look better in color, but it cost considerably more to print it in color. Like I might be able to go away with a $15 version in black and white, but have to charge at least $25 to have it in color.
I don't know anything about Amazon Print on Demand, but are you able to just make both choices available? So if someone wants to get it for 15 bucks, they can get it black and white, or if they're willing to spend the extra 10 bucks, get it in color?
I should be able to make them both available, although as far as I can tell, have to publish them as two completely different books.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
That's exciting though. I'll have to pick up a copy of that. It's always easier to read a technical book in physical copy, I think at least.
Yeah, I wonder if I should order an actual proof copy to make sure it looks half decent before I have, even though I just told the whole world that I do this. Uh, maybe something I should have considered before deciding to put this in the notes and discuss it, but here we are.
It's all good. Do you have any idea what the turnaround time is for that? For ordering something from Amazon Print on Demand?
I don't know, but I mean, it's pretty quick. They have machines that are designed just for printing and binding books and mailing them.
Right.
And I've seen them in action, similar systems. I went to the MIT Press bookstore when I had the opportunity to go to a company in Boston, in Cambridge,
Mm-hmm.
where MIT is. And they had one of these things just sitting there in the middle of the bookstore that if it was an MIT Press published book and they didn't have a copy on hand, they would just print it for you real quick. So I'm guessing Amazon can do it even faster.
It's good.
Whatever speed MIT Press can do it.
Nice. Okay. So we did ask for Q&A questions. We only got the one email to me though. And this is, the question is, when do you grab for C++ in your developer toolbox? And when do you go with some other language? And kind of a follow-up is, what are your driving reasons for the decision? Familiarity, performance, tooling, time to ship? And I guess we can kind of both try to answer this, Jason.
Yeah, go for it. You should start though, because you spend far more time outside of C++ than I do, I think.
Yeah, so I do spend a lot of time with C Sharp these days. I started spending a little bit more time with Java as well.
I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. It's okay. Um, but I mean, the thing is, I'm not really going and starting a whole lot of new projects. Like this is for work, and I'm really just kind of continuing to work on this same application for years now that we have multiple platforms, are being supported. So that's why I'm spending a lot of time on C Sharp on Windows. I'm spending more time in Java for an Android and cross-platform desktop version of an application. But as far as like reaching for other tools, like, the only time I'm really writing something new is if I'm just writing some little utility application, which depending on how complex it is and how much performance is a factor, I might use C Sharp, I might use C++, or I might use a scripting language or do it in PowerShell, something like that.
Do it in PowerShell. Just having this
Yeah.
conversation recently with another friend that was like, how powerful PowerShell is, and he should probably know it better. And I know basically nothing about it. Well, I know I've seen tweets from Izzy. She uses PowerShell on every platform because it is available on every platform. That's weird.
Yeah, I mean that's
I mean,
just
in my head, it's weird.
it's weird, but it's more of just Microsoft kind of loving the open source community and trying to bring their tools to more platforms. So it makes sense when you think
So
about that in recent history.
did you consider yourself a PowerShell expert?
Oh, not at all. Not at all. I always kind of need to go to the internet to try to figure out what I want to do. But it's nice to not have to worry about installing Ruby or some other scripting language and just use PowerShell.
I feel like, yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah.
I don't,
Um,
yeah, sorry.
I was just saying, so how about you, Jason? You have any reason you might go for some other language besides C++ when working on a project?
Yeah, I've written more code than I would care to admit in Ruby and Python. And
Hmm.
honestly, in my head, they're basically interchangeable. I know the languages are completely different. But the question to me is, do I need something with a bunch of like handy package support or not?
Hmm.
So if I'm like, well, I need to write this thing that integrates with GitHub. Well, the GitHub OctoKit, the best platform that it supports is Ruby. So I'm just going to use Ruby there. Or if in another case, I'm doing something with AWS, the AWS libraries for Python are better than the Ruby ones, fine. I'll just use Python there, whatever. That's kind of how I look at it. I don't really like programming in either one of them. Python definitely makes me more sad than Ruby does, but those are the tool that I'm going to look to if I need some sort of scripted thing. Other than that, it's maybe like sed or bash or something if it's going to be, like a quick one-off kind of thing.
Yeah, that's a really good point about whether you're going to use some library or package manager. I mean, kind of going back to my answer, one recent thing I worked on, which is kind of a little tool for generating kind of these custom packages. I needed to write and read XML, and doing that in C Sharp with C Sharp's standard library is a lot easier than having to use libxml or
Right.
libxml too. Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting because, yeah, C Sharp kind of speaks XML natively, huh?
Hmm.
It was
Yeah.
born in the era of XML.
Yeah. I guess it doesn't speak JSON natively. You'd have to bring in a library for that, but XML definitely speaks natively. Yeah.
Yeah, and how easy it is to get back an object representation of a JSON file in Ruby is just like crazy.
Hmm. Yeah.
YAML and JSON, I like using Ruby for those because they're just so easy to, and then you could just like write some object thing back out in the other format if you wanted to.
Right. Right. Okay. Well, I think that's it for us for the year, right, Jason?
Well, yeah,
Yeah.
I don't have anything else planned between now and January 1st.
Well, it's been a very strange year, but I'm glad we were able to keep the podcast going. Get an episode out every week, which we've actually never done before, but managed to do under these strange conditions because we're not traveling anywhere, so why not record a podcast episode every week?
So just a
Uh,
retrospective thing. What year did you start the podcast?
I think it's been 5 years. I think 2015 I started. Does that sound right to you?
So 5.5 years, I guess.
Yeah, I guess so. Double
That
check that real quick. Yeah, first episode was February 2015.
February 2015.
Yeah. So
Okay.
we're getting very close to 6 years of the podcast.
So were you not doing it on a regular weekly schedule in the very first, or were you?
I think I had like a 2 week break before in between having John called on and having you on.
Okay.
And then it was almost weekly. It's always miss like 2 or 3 weeks in a year was kind of the average for those first few years. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I guess I didn't really pay attention to that so much. I listened to the one with John Call before you had me on, I think, and then listened to the next few.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we got 2021 to look forward to. Hopefully things start going back to normal soon, but hopefully we can keep, this schedule going and keep CppCast coming out weekly.
Yeah, I
We'll
know.
shoot for it.
Some people apparently this is really hopeful to some people, so I'll just share it here too. My grandpa has actually had his first vaccine shot and will have his second one on Friday.
It's exciting.
Because that'll be 2 weeks from the first one. I mean, he's a 93-year-old living in a nursing home in Florida, so he checks all the boxes for being in the first tier there. And so, yes, real people are getting this, and maybe things will change some days in the foreseeable future.
Here's hoping.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, happy
Thanks, Rob.
2020, everyone.
Happy 2021.
Well, we hope 2021 will be happy, but happy 2020.
Okay.
Okay. Thanks, Jason. Thanks, everyone.